Good morning. Welcome to the June 2025 open meeting of the Federal Communications Commission. As is our tradition, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get going, I should address the proverbial Republican elephant in the room. Back when we blogged about this open commission meeting, we were in the midst of some change, a summer of change. I wrote in my blog that folks should just stay tuned, trust the process. It's going to work out. I personally never had any concerns about being able to have this meeting or have a quorum and didn't have to work through backup plans or nothing. I knew confidently, even back then, exactly how we would land, all three of us up on this dais. So obviously, welcome to Commissioner Trusty. It is so great to have her on board. All of us know Commissioner Trusty. I'm used to saying Olivia. Commissioner Trusty from her many, many years of service in government on Capitol Hill, including for her current stint on the Senate Commerce Committee, where she was overseeing the FCC and all of our work up here. So it's great to have someone that had been overseeing our work, doing our work now. So it's good, a little shift around. So obviously I want to offer my hearty congratulations to Commissioner Trusty. I think she's going to be a phenomenal member of the FCC, and I look forward to all of her contributions to come. But we'll have some more time for more statements on that front later. With that, Madam Associate Secretary, would you please introduce this morning's agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you, and good morning, Commissioners. For today's meeting, you will hear 3 items for your consideration. First, you will consider a report and order on revisions to cable television rate regulations. Second, you will consider a report and order on streamlining the engineering review for broadband data. Third, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking on the deletion of the TRS ASCII support requirement. This is your agenda for today. Today's first item is titled Removing Obsolete and Unworkable Cable Television Rate Rules, and will be presented by the Media Bureau. Aaron Boone, Acting Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Associate Secretary. And with that, Chief Boone, please proceed.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners, and welcome, Commissioner Trusty. Today, the Media Bureau presents a report and order that modernizes, streamlines, and simplifies the Commission's cable rate regulations. Joining me at the table are Maria Malarkey and Katie Costello of the Media Bureau's Policy Division. Katie will present the item. Thank you, Katie.
Good morning, Mr. Let's try again. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Section 623 of the Communications Act requires the Commission to adopt regulations to ensure that rates charged for the basic tier of cable service are reasonable. In the 1990s, the Commission developed a regulatory scheme to implement this statutory requirement. Today, cable operators face far more competition. In addition, Congress eliminated rate regulation for cable services other than the basic tier of service over 25 years ago. In light of these changes, the report and order simplifies Part 76 of the rules by eliminating complicated and unnecessary methodologies, calculations based on historical data, and obsolete forms. It also terminates open rate rulemaking proceedings, dismisses any related appeals, and closes their dockets. The report and order deregulates cable equipment that is not used exclusively to receive the basic tier of service. It deregulates small cable systems serving 15,000 or fewer subscribers that are owned by small cable companies serving 400,000 or fewer subscribers, and limits rate regulation to services provided to residential subscribers only. Adoption of the report and order will unleash prosperity through deregulation and is consistent with the goals of the Commission's delete docket. which evaluates technological and marketplace changes in order to alleviate unnecessary regulatory burdens that might stand in the way of investing in modernizing networks, developing infrastructure, and offering innovative and advanced communications. In total, the report and order will remove approximately 27 pages, 11,475 words, 77 rules or requirements, and 8 forms from the Commission's rules, reducing burdens on affected parties. The Media Bureau recommends that the Commission adopt the report and order and requests editorial privileges to make any necessary technical or conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. And the jet stream of air conditioner notwithstanding, I know you okay. You got frozen over there. I'm a little worried. We'll now hear comments from the bench, starting from someone always to my right in spirit and in substance. Commissioner Gomez.
I don't know about that. Let me just start by saying very quickly, welcome to Commissioner Trusty. I will have more words later, but it's great to have you here. So there have been findings of effective competition in the vast majority of the country, which means that cable rate regulation only applies to a handful of communities. When rates can be constrained by competition, that is always preferable to rate regulation. Today, we acknowledge this changed market and adopt streamlined rules to reduce burdens on both the industry and Commission staff. This is a great example of where reduced regulation benefits everyone. We maintain a reasonable process to ensure fair rates in the event they are needed. So thank you to the Media Bureau for your hard work on this complex order.
Thank you, Commissioner Gomez. And now for the first time, Commissioner Trusty, your statement.
Thank you so much. First, I will just offer my thanks to you, Chairman Carr, Commissioner Gomez, and the entire FCC staff for making this such a warm and wonderful welcome. I also want to give a special thanks to Krista Sinnell, Will Holloway, Jessica Kinsey, and Ms. Andy Rohn for helping me get ready for today's open meeting, my 4th day at the Commission. But I truly look forward to working with each of you on addressing some of the most critical and pressing issues across today's communications landscape. With respect to today's agenda and the item before us, President Trump has prioritized deregulatory initiatives that will help reduce red tape, unleash innovation, and promote prosperity. And I appreciate the work already underway at the Commission, led by Chairman Carr, to identify and clear out lingering regulatory encumbrances. With this in mind, I'm happy that instead of focusing too much on what's in with the new, today we're saying out with the old, starting with the Commission's overly complex and outdated cable television rate regulations. The Commission's rules governing rate regulations for cable television are decades old, and much has changed in the intervening years since they were adopted. Increased competition, regulatory updates, and technology advancements in the video marketplace had rendered the Commission's approach to cable rate regulations obsolete. Rules that may have served a worthwhile purpose in decades past are no longer necessary in today's video marketplace, where consumers have access to increasingly personalized viewing experiences at more competitive rates. The order we adopt today will modernize and streamline cable rate regulations by reducing existing reporting, record keeping, and other outdated compliance requirements. Doing so will encourage greater investment and better quality of services that will ultimately benefit our country's innovators, entrepreneurs, small businesses, and most importantly, consumers. I welcome the regulatory simplification and clarity brought by today's item, and it has my support.
Thank you, Commissioner Trusty. As Commissioner Trusty noted, we are working across government, across the administration to unleash economic growth and opportunity for communities all across the country. And one of the most important ways that we can do that is looking at our books and finding outdated rules and regulations that have been needlessly holding back America's private sector. That's why one of the very first things that I did as chair was to start an entirely new proceeding titled In Re Delete, Delete, Delete. We're doing a top-to-bottom review of all rules and regulations on our very thick stack of books. One early place you can look are the rules and regulations adopted in the wake of the 1992 Cable Act. After Congress passed that law, the FCC adopted reams and reams of new regulations. In the 30-plus years since then, a lot's changed. And if you want to look for dead wood in our books, a lot of the rules and regulations, as has been indicated today, regulating cable rates is a very good place to start. And that's exactly what we did, picking up on the good work of prior commissions from Chairman Pai's work in 2018 to tee up a lot of the ideas here. We're now able to move this proceeding to a final order. And as was indicated in the presentation, if you look at the numbers, today with this one vote, we're getting rid of 77 rules or requirements. We're eliminating 8 forms. We're closing out several dockets, and ultimately that translates into removing 27 pages from our rule books and over 11,000 words. So there's more work to go to continue to shrink that, but I think this is one good step in the right direction. So for my part, I want to express my thanks and appreciation to the team here that's been working on this proceeding and across the whole agency on our broader delete initiatives, but thanks in particular to Katie Costello, Lori Marchberg, Maria Malarkey, Nancy Murphy, Brendan Murray, Seema Nilsson, and Alex Sangenis. With that, we will now proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Gomez.
Approve.
Commissioner Trusty.
Approve.
The chair votes yes as well. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Associate Secretary, will you please announce the next item on today's agenda?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, Item 2 on your agenda is titled Establishing the Digital Opportunity Data Collection, Modernizing the FCC Form 477 Data Program, and will be presented by the Broadband Data Task Force. Jean Cadieux, Chair of the Broadband Data Task Force, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Associate Secretary. Ms. Cadieux, as we will get into later at the end of this is likely your first time, last time, not your first time, definitively.
Not my first rodeo.
At the dais, and as we'll sort of speak about later, just want to express my own personal thanks and appreciation for all of your great years of public service. And before that, we interacted in the private sector as well and shared the same law school.
We do.
So
Thank you, sir.
Graduated right around the
Appreciate
same time, too. Please proceed with the presentation of the item.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for those kind remarks. And good morning, Commissioners. Welcome, Commissioner Trusty. Today, I'm pleased to introduce on behalf of the Broadband Data Task Force an item that, if adopted, would streamline the Commission's broadband data collection efforts. Before turning to the presentation over to the task force staff, I'd like to thank the Office of Economics and Analytics, Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, Wireline Competition Bureau, as well as the Offices of Business Opportunities and General Counsel for their valuable assistance. Joining me at the table today are Ed Barthelme, Deputy Chair of the Task Force, and Jamil Kadre, Legal Advisor to the Task Force. Jamil will present the item.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, and welcome, Commissioner Trusty. Today's item would eliminate a needless burden on broadband providers, while at the same time continue to assure that the Commission collects high-quality, accurate, and granular broadband data as part of the broadband data collection. If adopted, the order before you will make it easier and less costly for many providers, particularly small providers, to certify BDC biannual broadband availability data. Importantly, the order also ensures the Commission continues to receive high-quality data by fine-tuning the engineering certification requirement to require review and certification by a qualified engineer who is familiar with RF network engineering and design. First, the order removes the requirement that a state-licensed professional engineer certify BDC biannual filings and replaces it with a more flexible and relevant standard. Rather than requiring a certified professional engineer to certify the filings, the engineering certification would now be satisfied by an engineer possessing a bachelor's or postgraduate degree in electrical engineering, electronic technology, or another similar technical discipline, and at least 7 years of relevant experience in broadband network design and/or performance, or an engineer with specialized training relevant to broadband network design and/or performance, and at least 10 years of relevant experience. I note that the task force, together with the bureaus and office, have waived the certified professional engineering standard for each biannual filing period since the first broadband data collection filing window opened in 2022. And today's order adopts the more flexible approach permitted by the prior waivers. Second, the order provides flexibility for companies that don't employ engineers who meet the standards in our rules by clarifying that the certifying engineer does not need to be a direct employee of the service provider and can instead be a third party or contractor. The Broadband Data Task Force recommends adoption of this item and requests editorial privileges.
Thank you. We will now proceed to comments from the bench. To my right, Commissioner Gomez. Just going to beat that joke to death, I think.
I am so not used to this. So, it's easy to forget how far we've come since the days before the FCC's National Broadband Map was released in its first iteration in 2022. Its creation marked a foundational step toward improving the quality and transparency of broadband data, helping federal and state governments be more effective stewards of the funds dedicated to connecting every American. The broadband data collection continues to be essential to ensuring that our nation's broadband data remains timely, accurate, and actionable. The item before us builds on that progress by removing burdensome requirements that have impacted broadband providers and radio frequency engineers. By streamlining these processes, we can maintain the critical information we need at the lowest cost to providers and ultimately consumers, which is a prime example of good governance. I also want to extend my sincere appreciation to the engineering community, whose expertise and dedication have been vital to improving the precision and value of our broadband data. Your work is critical to our shared mission of expanding equitable access to high-quality connectivity. Thank you to the Broadband Data Task Force and each bureau that contributed to this effort for all of your hard work on this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Gomez. Commissioner Trustee.
Understanding where broadband is available and where it is not available across the country is an essential first step to closing the digital divide and enabling the Commission, states, local communities, and policymakers to target critical resources to communities that need it most. In 2020, Congress passed the Broadband Data Act, a terrific piece of legislation, which required the Commission to adopt rules to collect broadband availability data from internet service providers, and once collected, verify the data and make it available to the public. In the years since, the Commission has undertaken the hard work to implement the Broadband Data Act, verify the accuracy of incoming data, and update the Commission's National Broadband Map. One look at the map shows how far we've come since the days of Form 477. But given the iterative nature of the broadband data collection, or BDC, there is still work to be done to make sure the data remains as accurate and granular as possible. The Commission's rules should ensure that providers submit accurate and verified BDC data. But in order for providers to submit accurate data, they must be able to comply with our rules. Unfortunately, the current rule requiring certified professional engineers to sign a provider's biannual BDC filing is both unworkable and impractical. Thankfully, today's item removes that unnecessary regulatory burden that could prevent the Commission from receiving timely, accurate broadband availability data and replaces it with a more flexible approach that has been shown to work for providers. Importantly, the new standard adopted in this item still ensures that providers have a trained, experienced engineer review and attest to the accuracy of providers' biannual BDC filings. Congress has placed a high priority on ensuring that high-quality verified data is used in the National Broadband Map, and this item helps the Commission meet that obligation. I look forward to working with the Chairman and the Commission to ensure that the broadband data collection process continues to align with congressional intent and provide consumers and policymakers with a comprehensive and accurate view of broadband availability across this country. This item has my full support.
Thank you, Commissioner Trustee. It always makes me a little bit nervous when people were on committee in Congress when legislation was passed that we're implementing. I definitely think we're going to have to hew closely to the statutory text on this one to be sure. As we continue this effort to find rules and regulations on our books that can be deleted, there's various different clues that you can look for to find those rules and regulations. One of them is if you can find a rule or regulation that's never actually gone into effect or been applied, and that's the case with this particular regulation here. Soon after we adopted the Certified Professional Engineer Standard, it became clear that finding people with those qualifications was both difficult and, in the view of the FCC, unnecessary. And so we've been waiving this rule ever since its first adoption and have replaced it with a standard that still gets the job done of qualified engineers. And so I want to thank the team again for the work on this, and again, thank Gene in particular, as Commissioner Trustee indicated. Many of us remember those old Form 477 days and the work that you and your team have done over the last couple of years to get the mapping process where it is has been a Herculean task and much appreciated. So thanks again to you in particular, but also to the whole team. So thanks to Ed Bartholome, to Melina Barzilia, Aaron Garza, Mike Gussow, Garnet Hanley, Will Holloway, Michael Jansen, Jamil Kadre, Gene Cadu, Douglas Klein, David Consul, Richard Mallon, Jonathan McCormick, Keith McCrickard, Janet Moran, Joy Ragsdale, and Chin Yu. And with that, we will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Gomez?
Approve.
Commissioner Trustee?
Approve.
The chair votes yes as well. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Associate Secretary, will you please announce the next item on today's agenda?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, item 3 on your agenda is titled Modernizing TTY Rules for Individuals with Hearing and Speech Disabilities, and will be presented by the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. Ed Bartholome, Acting Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Associate Secretary. Chief Bartholome, please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and welcome, Commissioner Trustee. Today, the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau presents a notice of proposed rulemaking for your consideration. 35 years ago, the landmark Americans with Disabilities Act directed the Commission to ensure that relay services are available to people with hearing or speech disabilities. Back then, telephone calls were still mostly circuit switched, and there was only one form of telecommunications relay service, which relied on the text telephone, or TTY. Today, relay services are mostly provided on the internet, and the ASCII TTY format is almost completely unused. The notice would propose to delete this now obsolete technological requirement. I would like to thank the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau staff for their hard work on this item, and I would also like to thank the Office of Economics and Analytics, the Office of the General Counsel, the Office of the Managing Director, and the Office of Communications Business Opportunities for their contributions to this item. Joining me today at the table are Bob Aldrich, Acting CGB Deputy Chief, and Michael Scott, a Deputy Chief in the CGB's Disability Rights Office. Michael will present the item.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, and welcome, Commissioner Trustee. I am pleased to present this draft notice of proposed rulemaking. The item before you proposes to delete an unnecessary Commission rule concerning telecommunication relay services, or TRS. Adopted in 1991, the Commission's rule requires that relay services that employ text telephone, or TTY technology, be capable of communicating in the Bordeaux or ASCII formats. Consumer experience and functionality of the service remains the same regardless of the underlying encoding format. Today, the ASCII format is rarely used by consumers who rely on TTY devices, and manufacturers of TTY devices no longer include support for the ASCII format. Continued application of the rule imposes unnecessary costs on TTY-based TRS providers to keep their hardware and software systems compatible with the ASCII format. Removing the ASCII requirement will reduce costs, eliminate an outdated regulatory requirement, and update the Commission's TRS standards to be more consistent with current usage of TTY-based relay service. The notice would also seek comment on whether any action is needed to minimize potential costs and burdens on consumers who use TTY devices in the ASCII format. The Bureau recommends adoption of the item and requests editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear comments from the bench, starting with Commissioner Gomez.
Efficient use of Telecommunications Relay Services Fund is vital to ensuring equitable access to telecommunications services for all Americans. Currently, TRS providers are required to maintain costly hardware and software systems capable of supporting ASCII format, as we just heard. which is a rarely used standard in today's communication landscape. By modernizing outdated regulatory requirements, the FCC can allocate TRS fund resources more effectively, providing financial support for telecommunications relay services that individuals with hearing or speech disabilities actually rely on for communication. I'm glad that we are seeking comment on cost savings and network upgrades that could flow from eliminating this requirement, as well as the impact on consumers when switching from ASCII to other TRS formats. I want to thank the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau staff for their work on this matter. By removing the ASCII support requirement, the FCC promotes responsible management of the TRS fund, thus supporting our goal of making communication services inclusive and accessible to all Americans.
Thank you. Commissioner Trusty.
Thank you. Under the Communications Act, the Commission is tasked with making sure individuals with hearing or speech disabilities can communicate with other telephone users. This is required to be done in a way that is functionally equivalent to voice communication to the extent possible and in the most efficient manner. The Commission has done good work in making this possible through telecommunications relay services. Consistent with the statute, this item takes an important step forward in enabling providers to allocate resources to technology that the majority of individuals with hearing or speech disabilities rely upon. Although the legacy ASCII format for telecommunications relay services was once widely used, when relay services were limited to text-to-voice or voice-to-text, TRS has since evolved. Today, consumers have overwhelmingly embraced newer, alternative forms of communication. This item rightly recognizes advancements in technology and changes in consumer behavior and proposes appropriate action toward adopting a more modern framework for TRS rules. Providers that otherwise would have used funds to comply with legacy standards and requirements under this proposed item may now be able to use those funds to update their networks and implement service enhancements that will yield greater benefits for individuals with hearing or speech disabilities. Importantly, this item advances a policy of fiscal prudence and responsibility while alleviating unnecessary regulatory burdens and delivering better quality and more accessible communication services to consumers. I thank the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau for their important work on this item. It has my full support.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next month, July 26th, will mark the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. As the first comprehensive law ever passed anywhere for people with disabilities, the ADA has been a historic legislative act. And the FCC has played a key role in advancing the success of the ADA. In particular, the FCC implements and enforces the portion of the ADA that requires providers to offer TRS. Now, the FCC's original rules governing TTY services, which were adopted in 1991, simply haven't kept pace with changes in technologies. Those rules require that TTY-based devices must be capable of communicating in two coding formats, as we've heard. Baudot, I struggle with this one. Baudot, is that what we decided? Okay, let me start again. Two technologies, Baudot and ASCII. Now, when those rules were adopted, ASCII was broadly considered to be a superior technology for TTY. In fact, it was estimated that ASCII would transmit words at twice the speed per minute. However, the market delivered a very different verdict. Turns out that ASCII was more Betamax than VHS. Today, that's a deep one. Today, ASCII calls account for simply 0.01% of all TTY-based communications. And our own record shows that there is 0 commenters who've made the case that we should preserve the ASCII requirement. So this is another example of where it's time to retire a FCC regulation that no longer makes sense in today's modern market. So if adopted here, TRS providers will not have to maintain costly ASCII-compatible hardware and software systems and can instead invest their resources in the provision of services. This item, like the others adopted today, is critical to our efforts to have the agency eliminate needless regulations and red tape that can stifle private sector efficiency and innovation. So thank you again to the staff who worked on this item, including Robert Aldrich, Ed Bartholom, Ike Offenbach, and Michael Scott. We'll now proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Gomez.
Approve.
Commissioner Trusty.
Approve.
The chair votes yes as well. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. At this point, would any of my colleagues like to make announcements, starting with Commissioner Gomez?
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, and to reiterate, I want to congratulate Commissioner Trusty on joining the commission this week. I have known her for many years now and have nothing but respect for her. I am delighted to have her as my colleague. And I'm hopeful that we will find ways to collaborate to further the mission of the agency. I sincerely look forward to working with you, so welcome to the commission. I also have a public service announcement. It used to be that when people found themselves in an abusive situation, separating a shared cell phone line from an abuser was yet another hurdle to jump to get to safety. I see we have the plane about to take off. But in 2023, the Commission made it easier for abuse survivors to leave safely with their phones. It is a simple fact that for many of us, our phones are actual lifelines. They are the means we use to connect with our families, friends, and support communities, and the fear of losing this connection can be paralyzing. At the direction of Congress, we address this very real problem by requiring providers to separate the phone line of an abuse survivor from the phone line of their abuser when the survivor requests it. Today, I am highlighting this worthy action that the FCC took almost 2 years ago in order to raise awareness. I recently met with representatives from the National Domestic Violence Hotline who pointed out that too many people still don't know that separating their phone line from that of their abuser is as easy as asking the phone company to do it. To help, they published a blog to educate people about the steps to follow to request a line separation. I want all consumers to learn about this life-saving option that is available to them today. And I also want to encourage community and civil society organizations to help us get the word out. We look forward to collaborating with you to support survivors in your communities as they navigate exiting abusive environments and rebuilding their lives. Now I'd like to share this message in Spanish. Para muchos de nosotros, nuestros teléfonos son un verdadero salvavidas. Los usamos para conectarnos con nuestras familias, amigos y comunidades de apoyo. Y el miedo a perder esta conexión puede ser paralizante, especialmente cuando una persona en una situación de violencia intrafamiliar tiene que separar su línea telefónica de la que comparte con el agresor. En 2023, por orden del Congreso, la FCC le exigió a los proveedores de telecomunicaciones la separación de la línea telefónica de la víctima que logra escapar de la línea telefónica del agresor cuando la víctima lo solicite. Recientemente, representantes de la Línea Telefónica Nacional para la Atención Urgente de Casos de Violencia Intrafamiliar señalaron que muchas personas aún desconocen que pueden separar su número telefónico del teléfono de sus agresores. Para informar a la comunidad, publicaron un blog destinado a guiar a los afectados sobre los pasos a seguir para solicitar la separación de su línea telefónica. Hoy, para crear conciencia, quiero destacar esta opción que salva vidas y que está disponible a todos los consumidores. También quiero instar a las organizaciones comunitarias y de la sociedad civil a que nos ayuden a difundir este mensaje para apoyar a los sobrevivientes de violencia intrafamiliar a reconstruir sus vidas. Okay, so now in English. I'm also delighted to introduce you all to my 2025 summer interns. Cassie Porter, please stand up, Cassie, is a rising third year at Howard University School of Law. She grew up in Kansas City and attended the University of Kansas, where she majored in psychology with a minor in women, gender, and sexuality studies. She is the president-elect of the Technology, Media, and Telecommunications Association at Howard and has a cat named Moose. Jessica Sneesby, please stand up, is a rising third-year law student at the University of Colorado in Boulder, where I was, by the way, yesterday, where she is focusing on international and telecommunications law. Jessica was raised in Batavia, Illinois, a small suburb of Chicago, and graduated with distinction from the University of Colorado at Boulder with a double major in political science and environmental studies. In her free time, she is learning German to prepare for her study abroad semester in Germany this fall. And Kate Williams is a senior at the University of Florida studying media production, management, and technology. Originally from Orlando, Kate has contributed to a variety of initiatives from public records research at the Breckner Freedom of Information Project to environmental justice campaigns with the Human Impact Institute. Outside of academics and work, Kate is a freelance graduation photographer and enjoys making ceramics in her free time. Welcome. That's it, I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Gomez. Commissioner Trustee, any announcements that you would like to make?
Yes, sir. First, thank you, Commissioner Gomez, for your very kind words. I'm honored to be here, and I really do look forward to working with you as well on fulfilling the FCC's mission. I also want to take this as an opportunity to announce some staff appointments. I'm pleased to announce that these talented individuals will be joining my team. Each brings a wealth of experience, deep commitment to public service, and a shared passion for advancing the Commission's mission. I look forward to working alongside of them as we serve the American people. I'll start with Krista Sinnell as our Chief of Staff and Senior Counsel. She previously served as a legal advisor in the FCC's Office of Engineering and Technology and held prior roles at the Commission, including legal advisor to a chairman, commissioner, and the Media Bureau. We also have William Holloway, who will be acting legal advisor. He joins from the FCC's Broadband Data Task Force, where he served as counsel and provided legal and policy support on matters related to the implementation of the Broadband Data Act. So we'll be very close. We'll be working together on that. And then Jessica Kinsey, who will also be an acting legal advisor. She joins from the Enforcement Bureau, where she most recently served as an attorney advisor in the Telecommunications Consumers Division. And then Ms. Andy Rohn as acting confidential assistant. Andy is beloved, simply beloved by everybody. So I'm excited to have her a part of the team. A formal release will go out or be posted following the conclusion of today's meeting. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Well, welcome again to you, and welcome and congratulations to everyone that is up in your office now. You got a great team there. Before we adjourn, I'd like to make a couple of announcements myself. First off is a summer intern in our office, Ryan Cavanis. Ryan, if you do the obligatory standing up. Ryan is a rising second-year law student at Antonin Scalia Law School. As an intern, he's already hit the ground running for us in my office, doing legal research, preparing briefing materials, and generally finding ways to be helpful and move the ball forward in our office. So I want to thank you for that. Ryan is an Eagle Scout, and in his free time enjoys hiking, reading, and tabletop games. We are very excited to have him on board. Thank you very much. Moving on to FCC retirement announcements. We got a couple this month. Jill Coogan retired from the Public Safety Bureau. Jill has been a valued member of the FCC team for 5 years, and her dedication and contributions will certainly be missed. She's played a key role in promoting an effective and reliable 911 system, including helping to implement Kerry's Law and reporting on 911 fee expenditures. So I want to express my own sincere gratitude for Jill's years of service and wish her all the best in her retirement. Next up is Patricia Goff. Patricia will be retiring from OET after an exceptional 26-year run at the agency. Pat advanced from a trainee to her final role as an industry analyst, where she played a vital role in assisting manufacturers around the globe in navigating the FCC's equipment authorization process. As Pat closes this chapter, we thank her for her extraordinary service and wish her all the best in her well-earned retirement. Next up, as previewed, Jean Cadieux. This is a tough one. Jean will be departing the commission in July. Jean joined the Wireless Bureau back in 2014 after 30 years of private sector experience. In the time, she has chaired 2 task forces, the Incentive Auction Task Force and the Broadband Data Task Force. In other words, if there was a difficult, complex, stressful, politically fraught, yeah, exactly, issue area, Jean was exactly the person to put on it and to get the job done. In her incentive auction capacity, Jean led the effort to coordinate and manage the complex post-auction repack of over 2,000 TV stations and the reimbursement process for their cost. That transition ultimately delivered over 80 megahertz of spectrum in the auction, and we did it in 3 years, on time and well within the budget, which is saying something for work of that magnitude. Jean's leadership resulted in the FCC winning both an Edelman Award and an Emmy. Not a lot of people can say that from their government service. Jean was next tapped to lead a new task force charged with the challenging endeavor of implementing the broadband data collection and launching the nationwide broadband map. This map has become an essential tool for ensuring that we are devoting funding to areas that need broadband and not subsidizing overbuilding. So thank you again to Jean. Tough shoes to fill, but although Jean is departing, I want to assure you that the Broadband Data Task Force will be left in good hands. I've asked Ed Bartholom and John McCormick to carry on the task force as co-chairs of that entity. Both Ed and John have already played essential roles in managing and implementing the systems and policies that underpin the broadband data collection and supporting providers. So they are very well situated to pick up the slack there. I'm confident that the MAP's success will continue and very much appreciate their willingness to take on the additional responsibilities that will come with these new co-chair positions. Separately, Hillary DeNigro has agreed to step up as chair of the Incentive Auction Task Force to make sure the work there continues to run smoothly as well. So thank you to Jean, and thank you to everyone for trying to sort of cobble together feet that will fit in her shoes when she leaves. Madam Secretary, Madam Associate Secretary, will you please announce the next date for the Commission's monthly agenda meeting?
The next agenda meeting for the Federal Communications Commission is Thursday, July 24th, 2025.
Thank you. Until then, we stand adjourned.
Welcome to the Chairman's press conference. We're going to get going in a second. All right, thank you. All right. Welcome. So we're going to take questions from the reporters today. And with that, let me hand it off to Chairman Carr. When he gets a chance.
Okay, great to see everybody again. It's wonderful to have if not a full complement, at least a quorum at the agency. As I indicated in the meeting and in my previous blog, you just got to trust the process. And here we are, getting things right across the finish line. So other than Commissioner Trustee herself, probably I'm the most excited that we were able to get a quorum and get this commission meeting across the finish line. And I'm excited about next month's agenda as well. We'll have more news to break on that next week. Next week, I'll also be heading back to South Dakota, the real SF, in my view, Sioux Falls, where I'll be sort of walking through some of the agenda that I've been both running at the FCC and that I intend to run. It's going to be a build agenda, and I'll be going back to Sioux Falls, where I've had the chance. The reason it's Sioux Falls is going back to one of the tower climbing training centers. It was the first place that I ever put on a hard hat or a harness, and it's kind of been off to the races ever since then. And I view my job now as chair to make it easier for America's telecom crews and tower techs to build out America's internet infrastructure. I think we had a bit of a hiccup the last couple of years, most notably when it comes to the BEAD program not getting off the ground, not getting shovels moving or dirt turning. And so I'll be back out in South Dakota laying out a Build America agenda and putting out some of the key guideposts that I'm going to be looking at the FCC going forward. With that, happy to stop and take your questions.
Chairman, thank you very much. Matt Daneman, Communications Daily. Can you discuss a little bit the language of the broadcast ownership cap public notice, specifically regarding network-owned stations? I guess I'm just wondering, wouldn't eliminating the ownership cap for some stations but not network-owned stations, doesn't that put the agency on, I guess, sort of a weird legal ground? What's the policy rationale?
I don't know. Where's OGC? Is there something called weird legal ground? I don't know. Look, at this point, we're very open-minded as to the outcome. There's a whole range of options that could be possible. And if you sort of step back, one of the themes that I've tried to be pretty clear about, and maybe some people would think I've been too blunt about, is I want to work to empower local broadcasters. And I think if you, again, look at trust in media across the board, trust in sort of, national programmers, particularly when it comes to ABC, CBS, NBC, trust in those outlets is at an all-time low. And so separate from that, one thing I'm trying to do is continue to empower those local broadcasters to feel like they can actually have the freedom to serve their local communities. So as we go forward in this proceeding, I'm open-minded as to where we will ultimately end up. But again, one of the North Stars that I've been looking at is empowering those local broadcasters. So.
Good morning, Chairman. Kelsey Griffiths with Bloomberg News. A couple questions for you. I know I've already kind of asked you earlier on the side, but I just want to see if...
You tried to get something out
I'm
of
going
me.
to try again.
Yeah.
Can you share any updates on the agency's review of Skydance Paramount merger or the agency's reviews of EchoStar spectrum usage? And then secondly, do you have any updates that you can share on the probe into publicly funded broadcasters' use of sponsorship arrangements?
Yeah. On the Paramount Skydance, we continue to run our normal course review on that one. As I think I indicated with you all earlier, we came in January. There's been a number of different transactions that have been pending at the FCC at that point, some longer, some shorter. And we've just been grinding through all of them, running our normal course review. And when we get to a point of making decision, yes, no, or otherwise, we make that and we make it public. And we've just been working through all of them. We've done obviously sort of Verizon Frontier. We did a smaller T-Mobile transaction. We're working on a couple of satellite matters right now, and everything is just going through the normal course review. With respect to the DISH proceeding in particular, I've been public about my concerns there. I've sent a letter to DISH. I think, as I made clear in that letter, it's my view that right now we are really working hard to make sure that this valuable public resource of spectrum is put to use. And as I sort of indicated in the letter, no new news to break. But I think the status quo needs to change. There's lots of different paths forward there, and all options are still on the table at the FCC.
Is there a timeline by which you need to act on that matter?
I think soon. Yeah,
Okay.
I think soon.
Chairman Ted Johnson from Deadline. I have a question that has to do with the CBS 60 Minutes complaint and the ABC presidential debate complaint. Back in 2021, you issued a statement, and it said a newsroom's decision about what stories to cover and how to frame them should be beyond the reach of any government official, not targeted by them. Is that still your view?
If you look at the context of that statement, yes. What we were talking about there was a letter by several House Democrats to cable companies pressuring them to drop Fox News, Newsmax, and OAN based on the political perspectives of those House Democrats' letters, views of them. When it comes to cable channels like Newsmax and OAN and Fox News, the subject of that statement, the FCC's remit is very different than when it comes to ABC and NBC, right? ABC, NBC are licensed by the FCC, whether it's the individual station that carries that affiliated programming. And unlike those other entities, they have an obligation to serve the public interest. And again, when you step back and look at, trust in the national news media right now, it's absolutely to the floor. I mean, it used to be the case, you look at this Pew study, and it showed that for, a long time there's been declining trust in national news media, but at least they were more trusted than Congress. And I think now they've slipped below trust in Congress. And like I said, I oftentimes have more, faith in gas station sushi than you do if you look at some of the reporting that's been out there, including recently with some of these sort of national stories. So, I think it's entirely consistent to say there's a very different role for the FCC with respect to cable channels, which is, again, the target in the context of that statement, and the licensed broadcasters. In fact, after that pressure campaign from House Democrats, several of those relevant channels ended up getting dropped. So,
I guess why, in the statement, you also mentioned that, you said a private entity's decision about what news to carry cannot be reconciled with bedrock principles of free speech and journalistic freedom. So why would it make any difference whether the news entity is on cable or in broadcast? Don't they still have those bedrock First Amendment principles?
Congress has been very clear that, the regulatory authority with respect to broadcasters is different than the regulatory authority with respect to cable. And broadcast is different for several reasons. One, they have access to valuable public resource spectrum. When we license a broadcast to operate on the 6 megahertz of spectrum, we're necessarily denying other speakers the right to do that. Similarly, there's statutory benefits that you get from being a licensed broadcaster, including things that ultimately go to retransmission consent and whatnot. So I do think it's not my decision, it's Congress's decision that there's a very different regulatory structure. And again, the thing that's the subject of the regulation is different. What I'm talking about is making sure that broadcasters fulfill their public interest obligation. I think what the Democrats in that letter were talking about was something different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to follow up on EchoStar. And, first, can you comment or confirm this report that President Trump called you over the White House to meet with EchoStar?
Kelsey's right there. She's the one that reported on it. So, I mean,
well, I think if you were there, you're probably a better source than that. No, not to besmirch my colleague, for sure. Yeah. But can you talk about that, whether it happened, whether you want to reach a deal or you're taking instruction from the president as to that? And then as part of that, can I ask if the subject of Trump Mobile came up or whether EchoStar might be involved, and whether the commission will have to approve a Section 214 approval for Trump Mobile to operate?
Yeah. Look, I don't make it a habit of disclosing, the content of conversations with the president. What I can tell you is I've had no conversations, I don't think, with really anybody, even outside this building, on the Trump Mobile development. I learned about it, I think, the way everyone did, through the press release. We're going to run our normal process if there's anything that needs to be done by the FCC on that. And I think, separately, I think competition's a good thing. So I think it's great. We get more sort of entry, more competition. And again, with respect to Dish, my position is the same. I don't really feel like now's the right time to sort of litigate this publicly. My position's been clear, and I think the bottom line, in my view, and my view of all the conversations I've had, is that, the status quo needs to change. And that's sort of the bottom line at this point, and we need to move quickly. I think there's sort of a narrow window of opportunity here, but the FCC still has a number of our proceedings that are sort of sitting there, and we'll see if we need to reinvigorate those or not.
But is it right that an MVNO like Trump Mobile would need a Section 214 authorization to?
Well, look, we're going to run our normal process, and we're going to apply it to anybody that comes in.
Chairman Carr, my name is Savan Mojo with SP Global Market Intelligence. Wanted to ask you about to the extent the FCC is monitoring the proposed AI moratorium in the reconciliation bill. How do you go about assessing, what the FCC stance should be on that, given that there's potential tie-in with the spectrum auction, obviously, and then the BEAD funding? What criteria would you use to determine whether or not that's something that would be beneficial?
Well, look, when it comes to one big beautiful bill, the focus of the FCC obviously has been in the main on the spectrum provisions of it. I don't think we've done a lot of direct work on the AI portions, and so we'd defer to Congress as to wherever they decide to land on that particular issue. I think when it comes to spectrum, this is one of the most significant things that Congress, I know there's people that are, into tax and tax issues and like whether because they're at a company or at an agency that's relevant to that. So people have different perspectives, but at least from where I sit, one of the most important things we can do for the economy, for competition, for national security is to both restore the FCC's auction authority and make clear that there's a concrete pipeline of spectrum that we're going to move on. And so that's what we're very, very focused on. I've been encouraged, obviously, with the work that Chairman Cruz has been doing and that the White House has been doing on this. And again, it's vital that we get this across the finish line. But our focus has been spectrum rather than the AI portions. Thank you.
Wesley Brown with MLEX. Quick question on the T-Mobile U.S. Cellular. There's been some ask for consolidation and just looking at the entire market of wireless, dispersing those U.S. Cellular assets among not just T-Mobile, but some of the other providers. Is that something that the Commission feels is going to be, just at least something to look at, or is it more focused on, just the transaction itself?
I don't know that I'm tracking entirely. We obviously have been, working on the T-Mobile U.S. Cellular deal. We've got no final decision to announce there, or sort of final decision about any of the particulars. So I don't know that I can provide any more sort of specifics on that at this point, but hopefully we're getting close.
Sadie McLean, Broadband Breakfast. How are you feeling about having a Republican majority on the commission now?
It feels great. Yeah, no, it's really, really good. I've had the honor of basically sitting in every single seat, I think, on this dais, from sort of wingman commissioner in the majority to commissioner in the minority to now chair. And I've lived through lots of different compositions of commissions in terms of numbers. When I was not chair the last 4 years, I thought 2-2 was a pretty good number. Where you sit sometimes changes your perspective on things, and 2-2, wasn't as great anymore, I think, the last couple months. I think 2-1's better. There could be other compositions that I'd like as well, but I'm really glad to have Commissioner Trusty here. Again, glad that we got this meeting done. I think we're going to have a very, very busy, productive July and August in terms of a number of items that we've got teed up and ready to go. And so I think it's going to be a sort of trial by fire for Commissioner Trusty. I mean, obviously, hit the ground running already, a couple days after getting sworn in here. And I think we're going to have a busy July and August as well.
And how will having a Republican majority affect your future plans and legislation in the FCC?
Look, yeah, we're going to continue to execute on, the agenda that we've laid out. Again, we'll have more to say on exactly what that agenda will be next week with the build agenda. But obviously, we've already started to tick through what our priorities are going to be, and it's going to be accelerating infrastructure builds, freeing up more spectrum, helping make sure that the U.S. continues to lead in the space economy, national security. Obviously, a lot of what we're going to do is going to be bipartisan and be unanimous. And, that's the agenda that we're going to run. Good to see you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we're going to do the Bureau press conference. So we're going to take questions on the items that were adopted today with the bureaus, if you have any. So I'm just going to go through the items. If you do have questions, let me know. We'll call up the Bureau or task force. So for the first item, the Media Bureau cable rates item. Okay, Media Bureau. Aaron? If you don't mind. You tried,
I tried to
I
get
got
out.
you though.
Thank you.
Matt?
Aaron, apologies. I know you want to get out of here. On the cable rate regulation item, NCTA had wanted different rate calculations for basic rate equipment. Were there any changes to the item as approved addressing that or any other changes to the item? Did the item change?
No changes.
No changes from the draft. Thank you.
Any other questions on this item?
I'm running.
Great. All right, you can go this time. Thank you, Aaron. All right, next we're going to take up the broadband data question from the Broadband Data Task Force. Any questions on that item? All right. I guess I heard you were going to. Well, he's going to give you one, but Matt was not going to ask a question, but now he will. So.
Since you're up there, the standard question: any notable changes from between the draft item and the approved item?
Sorry?
Any notable changes from
No.
the draft to the approved item?
No, just non-substantive
Just
commas and things.
Footnote sorts of things. Thank you.
Anything else on that item?
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you. And thank you, Jean. We're going to miss you. Next question. Any questions on the TTY? All right, Matt, Ed.
Hey,
I'm not even going to ask you know what the question is.
no substantive changes to the item.
Lovely. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions on this item? Great. Thank you, sir. Great. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Commissioner Gomez. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Still morning, right? Yep. I'm glad to see everyone survived the FCC quorum crisis of 2025. In all seriousness, we're all happy to have my colleague Olivia Trusty on board, and I'm looking forward to working closely with her. But despite the chaos here in Washington, the work of the FCC must continue. As you know, I launched my First Amendment tour a few months ago to shine a light on the administration's campaign of censorship and control. Since then, we've seen all kinds of actions aimed at silencing dissent and punishing critics. These aggressive tactics recently culminated in a U.S. senator being forcibly removed from a public event and thrown into the ground simply for asking a government agency he oversees a question. This is what government censorship and control looks like today. I was just recently in Los Angeles and in rural Kentucky as part of my tour. My message to the people of Los Angeles and Kentucky was simple. Now is the time to stand up and push back against this assault on free expression and to remind those in power that the First Amendment is not optional. I'm looking forward to sharing some new and exciting announcements on that front very soon, so stay tuned. Secondly, I want to take a quick moment to share my concerns regarding this administration's decision to strip away support for LGBTQ+ Americans for the 988 Suicide Prevention Hotline. Since its inception, the program has provided life-saving crisis care to an estimated 1.3 million LGBTQ+ youth across the United States. We know that this form of specialized support is still very much needed, just as it is for veterans and other groups. LGBTQ+ young people are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their peers. The FCC played an integral role in creating 988 and supporting all its programs so it could reach as many people as possible, regardless of their gender identity, sexual orientation, or political beliefs. You might remember that it was in fact this president, under his first term, who signed the bipartisan legislation that created 988 into law. And a Republican-led FCC kickstarted the process to get 988 off the ground with the previous administration overseeing the expansion of services for the hotline. This has always been about saving lives. It has always been about people, not politics. But now this administration is picking between those who deserve support versus those who don't. It is choosing to make callous, heartless decisions about who may live and who may die. Because that will be the end result of this action. Young people in crisis will lose their lives. It is not too late for this administration to change course, and for the FCC to have the courage to stand up, push back, and say this is wrong. July 17 will be the last day that LGBTQ+ Americans will receive this specialized support. I will be paying close attention to this issue, and I hope you do too. Finally, I want to bring up to your attention a radical change envisioned by this FCC that will dramatically hand power to large, billion-dollar media companies at the expense of local broadcasters. Just hours before the national holiday, the FCC issued a notice that would begin the process to give billionaire-owned media conglomerates even more influence over what Americans see and hear. Most likely missed this last-minute release, and that's no accident. Because we know and they know that this isn't about strengthening journalism or preserving local news. This FCC proposal to unleash a new era of unregulated media consolidation is only about helping the largest broadcast companies grow even larger. at the expense of independent stations and the communities they serve. A media landscape dominated by a few national players will not deliver diverse local voices. Instead, it risks the loss of local jobs and local perspectives and the disappearance of independent, community-focused journalism. Across the country, I have visited local broadcasters who are working hard to keep their communities informed, connected, and safe. Their commitment to public service is clear, and it reflects exactly what broadcasting is meant to be. So trust me, I understand that there are real pressures facing local broadcasters today, and some targeted relief may be needed. But that calls for tailored, market-specific solutions, not a one-size-fits-all policy that deepens outside corporate control. What we're seeing here is a sweeping effort to tip the scales even further in favor of a handful of powerful corporations. Broadcast licenses are a public resource. They must be used for the public good, not as tools for a few billionaires to consolidate power and increase profits. Those entrusted with the public airwaves must act like stewards, not shareholders. This is a defining moment for the future of media. We can choose concentrated power and diminished community voices, or we can choose local service, accountability, and the public good. I will continue to stand with local broadcasters who prioritize service to their communities. Thank you. So I'm happy to take your questions.
Commissioner Ted Johnson from Deadline. Actually, two questions. The first is on the chairman's remarks. I asked him about what he has previously said about the First Amendment and government officials not getting involved in editorial decision-making. What was your reaction to that? My second question is about the ownership cap and the idea of lifting an ownership cap. What do you say about local stations that, through the National Association of Broadcasters, have made that a priority to lift the cap? You're saying that those local stations, are you saying that local stations don't want the cap lifted?
I am aware that local stations are facing a lot of pressures in this market. Things have, in fact, changed in the market dramatically over the years. But what I am saying is that we need a targeted approach. The media ecosystem is complicated. Some market-specific relief may be needed. I would say this is where we need a scalpel, not a chainsaw. These licenses are to use the public airwaves, and broadcasters have a responsibility to use this public resource for the public good. So while I think that we do need to think in a targeted way about how to give relief, something that's really just tailored for billionaire companies to profit at the expense of local journalism is problematic.
And what about the other question?
Oh, sorry. I need you to tell me, I'm not sure specifically.
I asked the chair, back in 2021, the chairman said that, when he was a commissioner, said that government officials should not be involved in newsroom decisions. When I asked him about it today, he said that that was in the context of cable programming, and broadcast programming is treated differently because it is regulated by the FCC.
I see. Well, I think I've been pretty clear that I believe government should stay out of editorial decisions in the newsrooms. The freedom of the press is in the First Amendment, regardless of where these journalists are broadcasting. So I don't believe that the FCC should be interfering in those news decisions, and I have been very clear that I think that what the FCC is doing currently is actually being weaponized by this administration in order to chill the speech in these newsrooms.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Morning.
Good morning. I wanted to ask you about a couple of the matters that we've been following closely from the chair's perspective, but I wanted to see how much information you potentially, are getting from the chair on that. Is the chair reading you into the EchoStar spectrum usage probe and/or the Paramount Skydance transaction? And if not, are those matters that you think you should have more information on at this stage?
So I have been following the EchoStar probe. I am concerned about the public nature of what the FCC is doing and the market harm it does to licensees. You know, the FCC has to maintain itself as a independent, stable, expert-driven regulatory body, and it should not be making decisions in a way that reflects the party in power. So, you know, it's really highly inappropriate for the FCC to take action that either directly benefits or harms a particular party based on whether it is favored or not in this administration. And I have no updates on the other transaction.
As a follow-up to both of those, do you believe that both for Skydance Paramount and EchoStar, there are any sort of time pressures that the FCC needs to abide by? For example, the 180-day shot clock for the transaction review?
Well, I mean, we know that the Paramount transaction is well beyond its 180-day shot clock. The FCC always tries to respect that shot clock to give some certainty to market participants. I cannot explain why we have blown that deadline.
Thank you.
Commissioner Matt Daneman, Communications Daily. Are there areas that you foresee the agency being more active? Are there other proceedings to be done regarding domestic violence?
Oh, you know, that's a good question. Today, the reason I made the statement during today's meeting is because I had heard, as I mentioned, that a lot of people are just unaware of the fact that they have the ability under the Safe Connections Act to separate their lines. We have their cell service lines from that of their abuser. Why is that so important? Because we don't want the abuser to be able to track someone who is trying to escape a bad situation at home. We have an outstanding proceeding asking about extending that to connected vehicles, because that's another way that people who are suffering from domestic abuse could be tracked by their abuser. I would hope, yes, I would hope that the commission would move forward in that, because in the end, it's about protecting people. It saves lives.
Dave Shepherdson from Reuters. Can I just ask, on the complaints that Chairman Carr reinstituted in early January, do you have any update on where those other ones sit? Obviously, the chairman referred the CBS complaint for public comment. Now that docket, or the public comment period, closed a few months ago. But is there any movement, as far as you can tell, on the other? Is your sense of the other complaints? They're just sort of sitting in stasis at this point?
I just don't know where they stand at this point. They shouldn't have been reinstated to begin with, and they most certainly should be dismissed. But I think the point of having these complaints be investigated at the staff level is just to chill speech.
And do you, now that the commission's back to a quorum, do you have any concerns that the White House could try to remove you from office? A number of commissioners at the FTC and various other independent federal agencies have been removed by the White House. Do you have any concerns about that?
Well, I'm not concerned for myself. Now that we have a quorum, we'll see what the White House does. As I've said before, I see it as my responsibility as a commission when I took my oath of office to speak out when I have something that I'm concerned about, and I will just continue doing so.
Commissioner Stefan Moder with S&P Global Market Intelligence. With respect to the potential for the AI moratorium to be included in the forthcoming reconciliation bill, and the potential ties that the FCC could be implicated with regard to BEAD funding or spectrum allocation, things like that. In your view, is there a role for the FCC to play in taking a stance one way or the other with respect to AI regulation at the federal level? And If so, what sort of assessment or criteria would you want to include in that conversation?
I think that there is a role for the FCC to look at AI as it relates to the issues that it regulates, the areas that it regulates. So that doesn't necessarily mean you regulate AI in general, but we do look at things like how can AI be used with robocalls? How can AI be used to improve accessibility for people with disabilities? But I'm really glad that you raise AI in the BEAD context, and I'm going to take you on a little bit of a side issue. If we are going to win the AI race against China, which this administration is very focused on, then we cannot allow wasteful and inefficient approach to introduce further delay in deployments for states and possibly subpar service for communities. To many, the answer is to simply have satellite and fixed wireless be the low-cost option for BEAD to fund. I don't disagree with that approach for certain scenarios, like connecting households in remote and hard-to-reach areas. But while fixed wireless is a good alternative, it has capacity limitations, and it is more expensive in the long run. And satellite service has great promise, but it remains an unproven technology at scale that, given what this administration seems to envision. Now, states know their communities best, so let them make those choices for themselves and let the process continue rather than waste years of efforts.
Sadie McLean, Broadband Breakfast. How will holding the minority on this commission affect your goals within this administration and within this commission?
So I am the lone minority commissioner. I gotta say, I had a really interesting time today getting used to having to speak first. That's the new for me during the meeting. Not that was your question. So being a minority commissioner isn't really going to change how I do things. I look to cooperate with my colleagues to add value and to make sure that consumers get the value of what we are doing. And where I disagree, I will speak up and push back. So, you know, I'm going to look closely at every vote and see where I stand with my values and with my desire to make sure that everything we do benefits consumers.
Have you discussed any of these changes that you were expecting with your fellow commissioners?
What do you mean? Sorry, and your mic's off.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Have you discussed future plans with your fellow commissioners now and what you are expecting to happen with the majority?
Oh, well, first of all, I'm delighted to have Commissioner Trustee here, but she and I have not really had a chance to sit down and chat, which we will. Chairman Carr and I actually speak often, and in that, when we have those conversations, we're able to discuss the specifics of what the FCC is doing, and I am very frank with him as he is with me.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all.